Hello, I'm back again with the Journal of Emily Shore. Today we are beginning with the entry for December 25th, Christmas Day, 1838, which was a Tuesday, and my 19th birthday. Why, it seems but the other day that I entered my teens, and now I am almost out of them. For some years past, every birthday has been almost an unexpected addition to my life, so precarious has my health long been. Now that I am at last in this warm, delightful climate, it is perhaps less unlikely that I shall see another. After Mamma has gone out to return calls, Mr. and Miss Freeman also paid us a visit. They did not stay long, but seemed to be most pleasing people. Indeed, from all we hear, we conclude them everything that is amiable and good. They are both young, brother and sister, recent visitors at Fuchel like ourselves, come for Mr. Freeman's health. I found myself capable of taking a short walk this evening with Miss Rogers and little Marian, and greatly did I enjoy the same. The air was so deliciously clear and pure and warm that it was superior to anything I have felt in England, and seemed to me the very perfection of climate. We went to the fruit market, which is in a spacious enclosure, paved, clean, and planted round with tall sycamores whose leaves have only begun to change colour. The fruit is displayed in sheds or booths of wood. There is a great abundance of pumpkins, oranges, guavas, apples, tomatoes, and filberts. The market is partly surrounded with stone benches on which I sat to rest in the shade, enjoying the view of the mountains with the evening light upon their summits. From the market we proceeded to the seashore, crossing the St. John's River by a wooden bridge and then immediately descending to the beach. Here I sat for some time on one of the great stones which I suppose are brought down by torrents. It was a sweet evening, and I was in the midst of beauty. Before me was the glassy sea on which lay a frigate, a schooner, and some other vessels at anchor, and the unlucky transit preparing to depart and receiving the visits of some Portuguese boats. To the right was the precipitous Loo Rock crowned by a fort. To the left, over a low ridge, I could see some of the turrets and white houses of Funchal with its ugly cathedral tower, the mountainside sprinkled with villas, and red rocky coast abruptly terminating with the desertas seen dimly through a mist. Behind me also rose the mountains, with little clouds passing over them and dipping into the ravines. There was a general air of calm and peace over the whole scene. No sound to be heard save the ripple of the retiring tide among the shingles. No one besides herself was near, except an invalid gentleman and 2 or 3 Portuguese boys, who seemed amused with watching us. The sky was clear and almost cloudless. The air, even when the sun was setting, was as soft as balm. December 27th, Thursday. In the evening we made an excursion to see a house a little out of town, accompanied by Dr. Nichols, Mr. Vasconcelos, Houghton, and Miss Rogers. It is called Quinta de Fale, and is about 2 miles, or rather more, from Tavera Street, in which we are. Funchal is decidedly a picturesque town, especially along the banks of the little river with the overhanging wooden stories, the balconies half broken down and filled with geraniums, and the trellises covered with vines. The narrow streets look very gloomy. The lower story of every house is always appropriated to stores and offices, and the iron gratings and dingy stone casements have exactly the air of a prison, an effect not diminished by the listless faces that crowd the heavy and half-ruinous balconies of the next story. The silence is remarkable. The hum of voices and the ringing of the church bells are the only sounds. No wheels, no footsteps, for the thin slippers commonly worn glide motionless over the strong pavement. I cannot imagine how the inhabitants have so much time to stare out of their houses at the passer-bys. Even from the most miserable cabin, the heads of men and women, almost in rags, are always peering lazily forth. They seem as if they had nothing to do. I am surprised, too, at the hot, glaring colours worn on holidays by Portuguese women. Scarlet shawls and pink bonnets are great favourites. As we ascended, a noble view was of course forming beneath us, and increasing in extent at every step. This I shall describe as it was when we reached the summit. Meantime, as we went higher, we passed garden after garden, and other pieces of open ground, all filled with Madeira vegetation, which, though seen at the worst season, impressed us with a high idea of luxuriance. Abundance of vine trellises and stone verandas covered not only with vines, but with another luxuriant creeper, the grenadilla, geraniums growing like weeds, peach trees already in blossom, bananas, in one garden a solitary palm, and everywhere the wildest profusion of prickly pear, growing as a weed and to a size which quite astonished us, who are used to see it cherished, and yet stunted in greenhouses. The roots and stems of many enormous plants are solid, woody, and as large as those of laurel trees, while the leaves are almost as large as docks. It has a handsome flower, not yet in bloom. The fruit is a favourite food of the Portuguese. Another plant, or rather shrub, of a remarkably bright green, was pointed out to us as a poison to fleas, which, from our personal experience, I would suppose must make it very valuable in Madeira. We heard everywhere the loud bubbling of little streams, directed through the gardens, and some welled out of the walls or ran along the roadside. The road, like the streets, is paved with round stones, and the pony, accustomed to the work and roughshod, scrambled up the very steep ascent with surprising agility and sureness of foot. December 28th, Friday. The sound of wheels astonished our ears today. They were those of a phaeton, of which there are 2 or 3 in Funchal, though but seldom used. If wheels were common on these rough pavements, Funchal would be the noisiest town in the world. And I'm just pausing here to see where we're at. I think we're going to roll through and finish this chapter here. December 29th, Saturday. We made an excursion today to the celebrated Convent. The Convent is a huge and lofty building close to the English church, which lies humbly at its feet. We alighted at the gates of a kind of hall and waited a little while our nun, who was to conduct us over the place. I looked with great curiosity at this, the first nun I have seen. Formerly I have been accustomed to associate with the idea of a nun iron gratings, attenuation, and melancholy with a proper share of youth and comeliness. These impressions were entirely effaced by the first glimpse of Maria Clara. She is a short, fat, jolly old woman of about 55, with a round, wrinkled, most good-humoured face, well adorned with very perceptible black moustaches. Nothing can exceed the happiness of her countenance, the heartiness of her manner. Nothing can be less romantic than her cordial shakes of the hand, the garrulity of her tongue, and the liveliness of her laugh. The convent is very ancient for Madeira, having been begun 7 years after the island was discovered. The long straggling passages, with their floors of teal plank so hard that every nail has had a place cut for it, and so durable that they have never been renewed, bear every mark of antiquity. The cells are generally in rows on each side of a passage, separated from it by an old wooden partition. But there are also many grouped about in all kinds of corners and projections. Maria Clara first took us to see hers. Most assuredly it did not by no means answer to my idea of a cell. There was not even an iron grating. I should rather call it a very comfortable, airy, cheerful bedroom. It is narrow, but long, sufficiently well furnished, with 2 windows opening onto a balcony and commanding a delightful view of the mountains, the sea, and what is of more consequence to Maria Clara, of the neighbouring houses, for the nuns are the greatest gossips in the town. On a little table in the window lay a tray containing a number of kisses, such as the English name, I forget the Portuguese, for a little sugar roll, something like barley sugar, which the nuns make and present to their guests wrapped in white paper. It was odd enough to see Maria Clara's cell filled with people, gentlemen as well as ladies, laughing and talking without restraint, and she herself laughing and talking as merrily as any. Every cell has at one end a kind of little canopy against the wall, generally containing a gaily dressed saint or virgin or infant Christ in the smartest of all possible cradles. And under it is a little table covered with all kinds of toys and knickknacks, the work of the nuns, very tastefully arranged, such as cakes, sweetmeats, the celebrated feather flowers, and the prettiest little models of churches or palaces, made of glittering materials. And these are mixed abundance of fruit. With these are mixed abundance of fruit, chiefly oranges and innumerable flowers of every scent and hue. The convent was thronged with visitors, perhaps as many as 200, but it is so large that we never saw more than a small party at once. No cell was so crowded as that of the well-known Maria Clementina, which seemed a general point of attraction. My curiosity to see this far-famed nun was now gratified. I saw her several times and watched her narrowly to obtain an exact notion of her appearance. She seems now about 37, is far superior in personal attractions to the other nuns, and has the remains of some beauty. But how she could have ever risen into celebrity on that score, I cannot conceive. Her countenance was smiling and pleasant, but I thought not that of a mind at ease. There seemed lurking unhappiness beneath the surface, and there was a slight compression in her lips, which might have been affection, but appeared to me to express a part of the same state of feeling. She really is, I believe, unhappy, and is no wonder, for her former misconduct has given her a bad name in the convent, and the nuns avoid her. Perhaps, too, they are a little jealous of her superior popularity. The general kitchen of the convent is a small place to cook a dinner for 50 nuns, but then that dinner is only bean broth. Each has a daily allowance of broth and bread. But let it not be supposed that they are nourished on such fare as this. They give it away to the poor, and concoct for themselves in their own private kitchens every sort of dainty. For every nun has 1, 2, or 3 kitchens of her own, and servants besides. We visited one of these, and saw some capital cakes and sweetmeats in preparation. I must not forget to observe that we espied a very well-used pack of cards in the kitchen of the convent, whereat Maria Clara laughed heartily and said the servants played. But it is very well known that this amusement is not confined to them. We went through many pillared galleries and cloisters, looking into the little gardens, which are small paved courts, delightfully crowded with the thickest flowering trees and shrubs, orange, lemon, hibiscus, roses, daturas, and very many whose names I do not know. The finest mixture of bright flowers and leaves. But I must not omit the singular changeable rose, which is not really a rose, except that the flower resembles it. It is a curiously shaped tree of small size, with large blossoms which are red one day and white the next. There are numerous creepers too, and small flowering plants of every kind. The profusion in which they grow is amazing. In the stone walls of the galleries are many little fountains, which are almost hidden by the delicate green ferns and mosses that grow luxuriantly over and around them. Little chapels, too, surrounded with foliage, stand on the edge of the courts, with steps leading down to them. Nothing can look more cool and refreshing. Our drawing room here is about 28 feet long, the walls whitewashed, which is usual, the floor covered with matting, which is a luxury. It is furnished with 3 tables, a sofa, 12 cushioned chairs, a cane great chair, a very comfortable easy chair which can be made into a sofa, 2 footstools, a music wagon, and 2 sets of bookcases with cupboards. This is an extraordinary quantity of furniture for Funkel. It opens into a dining room, which opens into a smaller room with a stove and large cupboards for glass, china, etc. Beyond this is my bedroom, which is very large, with a window at each end. Its entire furniture consists of a white curtain bed, a deal table, a looking glass, a chest of drawers, a fixed cupboard or wardrobe, 2 chairs, a small corner wash-hand stand, scantily provided, and 3 little strips of carpet round the bed. The walls, bare, whitewashed, dismal, also unlike my dear, snug little room at Bartley, which I shall never again inhabit. And that brings us to the end of that chapter. And I'm just seeing, when we move on to the next chapter here, we have what looks to me like a facsimile of perhaps one of the pages of Emily's journal, because this definitely looks like handwriting here, and the paper is a little bit different there. And we will be moving into the year 1839. And it looks like she's going to be writing significantly in January and February and into March. And we have an entry for May the 27th, which are extracts. And then from that point on, at the end of this chapter, that will be the end of the journal, but we do have some appendices at the front, at the back rather, extracts from her poems and her own writings. So we'll certainly check those out when we reach the end of this next and final chapter. So from here on out, her health is going to continue to decline, and as I suspect, she is going to pass away while living in Madeira.